everyone, and welcome to this video tutorial on EU directives. This is part of the EU law topic, which is on Exam 1, Section A. In today's video tutorial, we're going to be focusing solely on EU directives, and more specifically, we're going to be looking at vertical and horizontal direct effect of directives, which is a concept that students sometimes struggle with initially. So hopefully this video is going to be helpful to you in understanding how directives work. If we start by looking at a definition of directives then, a directive is a legal act of the European Union which requires member states to achieve a particular result without dictating the means of achieving that result. And that means that directives are formal instructions that require member states to change their national laws within a stated period of time. So the clue is in the name, directive. A directive is directing the member state to change their national law. And this is the main way that harmonisation between member states is reached. And directives are binding, so the member states must change their law to accord with them, but the manner of implementation is left to the individual member states. So the member states can choose how they incorporate, how they transpose the directive into their law. In this way, directives are different from regulations, which is another secondary source of EU law, because we know that regulations are automatically directly applicable in member states, but you can see here that when a directive is made in the EU, there's then this period of transposition where member states have to change their national law before it can be relied upon in the individual member states. And we need to have a look now at the concept of direct effect. Direct effect is the ability of a piece of European Union legislation to be enforced by an individual in a court of a member state. And a provision of EU law may be capable of direct effect if it's clear and precise, unconditional, and doesn't give the member states substantial discretion in its application. Direct effect can be vertical, which means that the EU legislation can be enforced against the state or an emanation of the state, or horizontal, that it can be enforced against another individual. EU treaty regulations and provisions, normal regulations are capable of both vertical and horizontal direct effect, but directives can generally only have vertical direct effect. And this is the concept that we're going to have a look at now. So if we have a look to begin with at vertical direct effect, the case here is Marshall in Southampton, and Miss Marshall was required to retire at the age of 62 when men could retire at 65, and she didn't think this was fair and she wanted to rely on the Equal Treatment Directive. Now the issue here was that the Equal Treatment Directive hadn't been fully implemented by the UK. So this went to court and the issue was, could she rely on this unimplemented Equal Treatment Directive? The European Court of Justice decided that directives can have vertical direct effect and can be relied on against an arm of the state or a public body. Now, because you can see here, Miss Marshall was working for an area health authority, that's what AHA is, that's a public body or an arm of the state, so she could rely on it. Now we contrast that case to the case of Duke and GEC Reliance, where again it was the same directive that the person wanted to rely on. It was the Equal Treatment Directive. Now Mrs. Duke was unable to rely on this Equal Treatment Directive as her employer was a private company, and directives don't have horizontal effect and can't be relied upon against private individuals in this way. Now, to try and make this a bit clearer for you, I've put a diagram on this next slide. And this is showing you the direct effect of directives that we've just seen in the two cases. So on this side, we've got vertical direct effect shown by Marshall in Southampton. And on this side, we've got horizontal direct effect shown by Duke and GEC Reliance. So Miss Marshall here, you can see she looks very happy because she works for an area health authority, which is an arm of the state. And there's vertical direct effect. So even though the directive hadn't been fully implemented, because she worked for this arm of the state, she could rely on it. And I suppose that's because if you're the state itself or an arm of the state, the state should be aware of the existence of this directive that's not being fully implemented. So it's fair to be able to rely on it against them. Whereas if we look at the case with Miss Duke didn't work for an arm of the state. She worked for a private company. And you can see that I've represented this differently. We've got vertical direct effect. The arm of the state is above a normal individual. It's above them, so you've got vertical direct effect. Whereas a private company is just on the same level as an individual, because it's just a normal individual who has this business, this private company. Now, in this instance, Miss Duke couldn't rely on the unimplemented directive against a private company because there's no horizontal direct effect, which is shown here. So I suppose the rationale is you can't rely on it against them because they're just a private company. They're not an arm of the state. How would this private company be aware of this existence of this unimplemented directive? So it can't be enforced against them. Now you can see from this that this seems really unfair. Why should it be that Miss Marshall can rely on the Equal Treatment Directive just because she's lucky enough to work for an arm of the state, whereas poor Miss Duke can't rely on the Equal Treatment Directive just because she happens to work for a private company, sorry. So this seems very unfair. So the court has developed a way around this problem. How can we help out the Miss Dukes, if you like? And the solution that the court has come up with is this concept of indirect effect. Indirect effect arises from the failure of a member state to implement a directive, and that might be either they've not done it at all or they've not done it correctly, but where direct effect can't apply because the party against whom the directive is sought to be enforced is a private body. So this indirect effect is going to apply in cases like Duke and GEC. And this concept's illustrated by the case of Frankovic in Italy. And here the Italian government failed to implement a directive that was aimed at protecting wages of employees whose employer had become insolvent. Frankovic sued the state for his financial loss because the firm he worked for went into liquidation, still owing him wages. And the important principle from this for us is that where a member state has not implemented a directive, a citizen can claim compensation from their state. So if we flick back to the diagram here, Miss Marshall's okay, she can enforce the directive against the arm of the state. Miss Duke's not okay because she can't enforce the directive against the private company, but what she can do is she can use the principle in Frankovic to sue the member state who hasn't implemented the directive. So that's the concept of direct effect of directives, which I just wanted to clarify for you today. I hope this little short tutorial has helped you to understand the concept.